This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Cool. Your son is 5 years old. He's smart, he's friendly. But at your first conference with his kindergarten teacher, she tells you that your son is fidgety and has trouble sitting still. He's not doing as well as he could be, and it's very distracting to the other children, she says. She suggests that you may want to have him tested for ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. There was a boy in my class just like your son last year, she says reassuringly. He was bright, just like your son, but he had trouble doing what was expected of him. We all knew he could do better. He was such a smart boy, just like your son. The pediatrician suggested Adderall. I'll tell you something, going on Adderall made a world of difference for that boy. It was like night and day. He became a really excellent student. But I don't think my son needs to be on medication, you say. And he's only 5 years old. Well, we could just put him in the playgroup, the teacher says. Those are the kids who aren't ready to learn to read and write. Every child is different, we understand that. In the playgroup, he could run around and jump up and down without distracting the other children. The playgroup, you say? But I thought the playgroup was for slow learners. My son is not a slow learner. I agree, the teacher says. That's why I think you should have him tested. 3 decades ago, a pastor named Robert Fulghum published a slim book of essays entitled All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Pastor Fulghum's book stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 2 years, selling over 15 million copies. The title essay emphasized the key lesson he himself had learned in kindergarten, namely, to live a balanced life, by which he meant that every day one should learn some and think some, and draw and paint and sing and dance and play, and work every day some. Sounds nice. Pastor Fulghum was drawing on recollections of his own kindergarten experience in 1942 to 1943, along with the kindergarten experiences of his 4 children in the 1960s and early 1970s. But even while the pastor's book was selling millions, celebrating the kindergarten he and his children had known, kindergarten was changing. Pastor Fulghum had written about how children in kindergarten actually could draw and paint and sing and dance and play. But that's no longer true. Today, most kids don't draw and paint and sing and dance and play in kindergarten. They learn to read and write. As the superintendent of my own school district proudly wrote, the 21st century kindergarten needs to be rigorous and academic. Traditional kindergarten activities such as finger painting and duck, duck, goose have been largely eliminated in most public schools and in many private schools across North America, replaced by a relentless focus on learning to read and write. Kindergarten isn't kindergarten anymore, as that parent in Calgary correctly observed in the opening of Chapter 1. Kindergarten has become first grade. Today, the kindergarten curriculum at most North American schools, both public and private, looks very much like the first grade curriculum in the 1970s. It's all about learning to read and write. Why is that a problem? In the past decade, a flood of research has demonstrated large sex differences in how the brains of girls and boys develop. There are big sex differences in how genes are expressed in a girl's brain compared with a boy's brain, even before birth. Gray matter develops earlier and faster in girls, with the result that the gray matter in the brain of the average adolescent girl is about 2 years more mature than that of the same age boy. Increasing testosterone levels are associated with increased thickness of the visual cortex in boys' brains, but with decreased thickness of the visual cortex in girls' brains. The different regions of the brain develop in a different sequence and tempo in girls compared with boys. In some regions of the brain, such as the parietal gray matter, the region of the brain most involved with integrating information from different sensory modalities, girls and boys develop along similar trajectories. But the pace of the girls' development is roughly 2 years ahead of the boys. In other regions, such as temporal gray matter, the region of the brain most involved with spatial perception and object recognition, girls